Jake Morrison tapped his fingers on the armrest of the pilot's chair, watching the star field outside the Odyssey stretch and blur as the ship slipped into its short-range jump sequence. Beside him, Lisa Tran adjusted her headset and double-checked the navigation readouts. They were supposed to be testing a new calibration protocol near Proxima b. Nothing fancy. Just a routine check to make sure the jump drive didn't glitch during future deep space missions. Earth was still years away from proper interstellar travel, but small research vessels like the Odyssey were pushing the limits, one cautious hop at a time. The ship hummed softly as the jump completed. The stars snapped back into focus. Jake exhaled. "Looks clean," he said. "Let's see where we ended up." Lisa pulled up the external sensors. Her brow furrowed. "That's not Proxima." The view outside was wrong. Instead of the familiar red glow of Proxima Centauri, they floated in a region dense with artificial structures, orbital docks, sensor arrays, and sleek angular ships unlike anything human engineers had ever designed. One of those ships, long and dagger-shaped with violet running lights, was already turning toward them. Jake," Lisa said, voice low. "We might have overshot." Before Jake could reply, a sharp tone blared from the comms panel. A voice crackled through, deep, guttural, and clearly not human. It repeated a phrase 3 times, each time more forceful. Then, without warning, the Odyssey lurched sideways. A beam of pale blue energy wrapped around their hull like a giant hand. "We're being pulled in," Jake said, hands flying over the controls. "Thrusters aren't responding." Lisa checked the power grid. "They've locked us down completely. No comms out, no engine control. We're just drifting." The alien ship towed them smoothly through a maze of orbital platforms until they reached a massive ring-shaped station orbiting a planet swirled in stormy purples and grays. Docking clamps hissed as the Odyssey was secured inside a hangar lit by harsh white lights. Moments later, armored figures marched aboard. Tall, reptilian beings with scaled skin, black eyes, and weapons slung across their chests. They moved with rigid discipline, barking orders in their own language. One of them pointed a weapon at Jake. Another gestured sharply for them to stand. Lisa raised her hand slowly. Jake did the same, but his expression wasn't fear. It was mild annoyance, like someone interrupted during a coffee break. The lead alien stepped forward. Its voice translated through a small device on its belt. "Identify your species and origin." Jake blinked. "Humans. From Earth. We're with the International Deep Space Research Initiative. We were running a jump calibration near Proxima Centauri. But something went sideways. Mind telling us where we are? Our GPS is acting up again." The alien, later identified as Enforcer Core, stared. Its black eyes narrowed. No species brought before the Cathari Dominion had ever spoken so casually. Most trembled, some wept. A few tried to fight and were crushed instantly. But these two? They looked more concerned about paperwork than punishment. "You have entered Sector Vexus 7 without clearance," Core said, voice flat. "This is sovereign space of the Cathari Dominion. Unauthorized entry is punishable by immediate assimilation or termination." Lisa tilted her head. "Assimilation, like becoming part of your empire? Do we get benefits, dental?" Core's jaw twitched. He had no protocol for sarcasm. Jake stepped slightly in front of Lisa, not in defense but out of habit. "Look, we didn't mean to crash your party. Our nav system glitched. If you could just point us toward the nearest exit, or better yet, give us coordinates to get back home. We'll be out of your hair." The Cathari exchanged glances. This was unprecedented. The Dominion had encountered dozens of species over centuries. All had reacted with terror, awe, or aggression, never boredom. They were escorted through the station's corridors, cold, metallic, lit by pulsing red strips. Other Cathari soldiers watched them pass, some with visible confusion. Humans didn't wear armor. They didn't carry weapons. They didn't even seem to understand the gravity of their situation. At the central command hub, a larger figure waited. High Overseer Vraktan, a veteran of 100 conquests, his scales scarred from battle, his presence enough to silence entire delegations with a glance. He stood as the humans entered, expecting them to kneel. They didn't. Lisa looked around, impressed. "Nice setup. Do you guys build all this yourselves?" Vraktan's voice rumbled like distant thunder. "You stand in the heart of the greatest empire this galaxy has ever known. You are less than insects before us, yet you show no fear. Why, Jake shrugged. Fear's kind of useless if you're already caught, right? Besides, we've seen worse. That caught Vraktan off guard. Worse than the Cathari Dominion? Well, Lisa said, smiling faintly. Have you ever dealt with Earth traffic during rush hour? Or a toddler with a juice box and a grudge? Honestly, this feels pretty tame. The room fell silent. Even the Cathari guards seemed unsure whether to be offended or amused. Vraktan studied them carefully. Their bioscans showed they were biologically fragile. Soft skin, weak bones, no natural weapons. Their ship was laughably small, powered by primitive fusion tech. Yet their demeanor suggested they came from a species that had faced chaos and survived not through strength, but through stubborn calm. You will be held for evaluation, Vraktan finally said. Your vessel will be scanned. Your knowledge will be extracted. If you are found to be spies, you will be erased. Fair enough, Jake said. But if you could make the holding cell have Wi-Fi, that'd be great. Lisa gets cranky without internet. Lisa elbowed him lightly. I do not. Vraktan turned away, already signaling his aides. But as the humans were led out, he paused. He had conquered star systems. He had broken empires. But for the first time, he felt something unfamiliar. Doubt. Not about his power, but about whether these strange, soft-skinned creatures even recognized it. Back in their temporary cell, a sterile room with a bench and a single light, Lisa sat down and sighed. Well, that could have gone worse. Jake leaned against the wall. Think they'll let us go? Doubt it. But hey, we're the first humans to visit an alien empire. That's got to count for something. Outside, Cathari scientists began analyzing the Odyssey's data logs. They found no weapon schematics, no invasion plans. Just research notes, music files, and a folder labeled Meme Archive Do Not Open During Meetings. As the hours passed, word spread through the station. 2 primitives had entered the Dominion's core and hadn't flinched. Not once. And somewhere deep in the Imperial archives, a new file was created. Species designation, human. Threat level, unknown. Behavioral anomaly, extreme, the galaxy had rules. Empires rose and fell, fear kept order. But humans, by accident and attitude, had just broken the script. And no one, not even the mighty Cathari, knew what came next. The morning after their arrival, though morning meant little in the sterile, time-neutral halls of the Cathari station, Jake and Lisa were escorted by 4 armored guards through a series of echoing corridors. The walls were smooth, cold metal, lit by faint red strips that pulsed like a slow heartbeat. They passed other beings along the way, short furry creatures with too many eyes, tall insect-like figures in robes, and hulking brutes with thick hides and chains around their necks. All of them kept their heads down. None of them spoke. Jake and Lisa walked with their hands clasped behind their backs, not because they were told to, but because it felt polite. Lisa even gave a small wave to a wide-eyed alien child peeking from behind a crate. The child ducked away instantly. They were brought to a vast chamber with towering black pillars and a raised dais at the far end. This was the Imperial Tribunal, a place where species were judged, sentenced, or absorbed into the Dominion. Hundreds of Cathari officials sat in tiered rows, their black eyes fixed on the 2 humans as they entered. Silence hung thick in the air. High Overseer Vraktan stood at the center of the dais, flanked by 2 elite enforcers. He looked down at them like a hawk spotting a mouse. Step forward, his translator boomed. Jake and Lisa walked to the center of the room without hesitation. The floor beneath them was carved with ancient Cathari symbols of conquest. You stand before the judgment of the Dominion, Vraktan said. Your species is unknown. Your ship is primitive. Your presence here is a violation of galactic law. Explain yourselves. Lisa cleared her throat. First off, sorry about the mix-up. Our jump drive had a bug. Literally, we think a cosmic ray flipped a bit in the nav computer. We weren't trying to trespass. We just wanted to test if our coffee maker works in 0G. A few Cathari shifted in their seats. Coffee maker? Jake added. And second, if you could point us to the nearest exit, we'd really appreciate it. We've got a report due back on Earth in 3 days, and my boss gets cranky when I'm late. Vraktan's tail flicked once, a sign of rising irritation. You speak as if you are guests, not prisoners. Well, we didn't come here to fight, Lisa said. We came here by accident. And honestly, your station is kind of impressive. Do you recycle your air? Because it smells clean. The tribunal chamber remained silent. No one had ever complimented Cathari air filtration during a trial. An elder Cathari judge leaned forward. "What is the military strength of your world?" Jake thought for a moment. "We've got a few nukes left over from old wars, some drones that mostly deliver packages, and a lot of lawyers. Not much of a threat unless you mess with our internet or cancel a sports season." The judge blinked. "Lawyers?" "Yeah," Lisa said. "They're like warriors, but with paperwork. Very scary." A low murmur spread through the chamber. The Cathari measured power in fleets, firepower, and obedience. Humans measured it in coffee, lawyers, and sports. It made no sense. Vraktan stepped down from the dais and circled them slowly like a predator testing its prey. "You show no fear. Why?" Jake met his gaze. "We're scared, sure. But panicking won't get us home. And yelling won't fix the nav computer. So we figured, be polite, be clear, and hope you're reasonable." "Reasonable," Vraktan repeated, as if tasting a foreign word. Back in their holding area, a slightly larger room this time, with 2 cots and a small table, Lisa flopped onto one of the beds. "Think we impressed them?" "Either that or they're deciding how to turn us into space dust," Jake said, sitting across from her. He tapped the table. "Hey, is this thing bolted down?" Before Lisa could answer, the door hissed open. A young Cathari technician entered, carrying a tray with 2 steaming mugs. He set them down carefully. "Coffee," he said in halting English. "You asked?" Lisa's eyes lit up. "You made coffee?" The technician nodded shyly. "Used your ship's beans, added water, heated." Jake took a sip. "It's actually not bad." The technician lingered. "Why you not afraid?" Lisa smiled. "Because fear doesn't help. On Earth we've faced plagues, wars, and really bad weather. We learned that staying calm and talking things out usually works better than screaming." The technician tilted his head. "My people do not talk. We obey." "Well," Jake said gently, "maybe it's time to try something new." The technician left, but not before glancing back twice. Over the next few hours, more Cathari came by, not guards but curious onlookers. Some just watched through the reinforced glass window. Others left small items: a data pad, a fruit that glowed faintly, a blanket woven from silver thread. Word had spread that the humans didn't cower, that they asked for coffee, that they smiled. Meanwhile, deep in the station's archives, analysts pored over the Odyssey's logs. They found no weapons, no war plans. Instead, they found videos of people dancing in the rain, arguing on news shows, helping strangers after disasters. One clip showed a man giving his coat to a homeless person in snow. The Cathari archivist paused it, confused. Why give warmth to another when you need it yourself? No one had an answer. By the end of the day, Vraktan received a report from his intelligence division. The humans appear non-hostile. Their culture values individual choice, humor, and cooperation over force. They have never been conquered, though they have conquered themselves many times, then rebuilt. Vraktan stared at the screen showing Jake laughing while trying to explain baseball to a guard. They rebuild after destroying themselves? Yes, Overseer, repeatedly, and each time, they add more art, more music, more stories. That night, the humans were moved to better quarters, still guarded. But with a window overlooking the planet below, purple storm swirled across its surface like ink in water. Lisa leaned against the glass. "You think they'll let us go?"
Jake sat on the edge of his cot.
"Maybe. Or maybe we're stuck here forever." "Either way," she said, "we didn't flinch." "No," he agreed. "We didn't." Outside in the corridors of power, something had shifted. The Cathari had always believed strength came from control. But these humans, soft, fragile, unarmed, carried a different kind of strength. One that didn't need armor or orders. One that simply stood. And for the first time in centuries, the Dominion felt uncertain. Not because of a weapon, but because of a question. What do you do with a species that refuses to play by the rules of fear? Jake and Lisa settled into a strange routine inside their new quarters on Vexus Prime. The room was clean, quiet and surprisingly comfortable. Soft lighting, a small food dispenser that somehow learned to make decent toast, and even a shelf with a few data slates loaded with Cathari history. They weren't prisoners in the usual sense, but they weren't free either. Guards still stood outside the door, though they no longer held weapons pointed at the humans. Some even nodded when Jake said good morning. Lisa spent her days talking to anyone who would listen. She explained Earth holidays, how pizza worked, why people cried at movies and what democracy actually meant. Messy, loud, and full of arguments, but built on the idea that no one should rule forever. She drew pictures on a slate to show how humans voted, how they protested, how they sometimes changed their minds. The Cathari technicians assigned to monitor her began asking questions. Quiet ones at first. Then more. Jake, meanwhile, found himself teaching a young Cathari named Trell how to play rock, paper, scissors. Trell was barely out of training, his scales still a light green instead of the deep violet of seasoned enforcers. He watched Jake's hands with wide eyes. So, rock beats scissors? Trell asked. Yep, Jake said. Scissors cut paper. Paper covers rock. It's a loop. No one wins forever. Trell tried it. He lost 3 times in a row. Instead of getting angry, he laughed. A soft hissing sound that surprised even him. This is fun, word of the game spread. Soon other young Cathari were playing it in the mess halls and maintenance tunnels. Officers frowned but didn't stop it. After all, it wasn't rebellion. It was just a game. But games, Jake knew, could plant seeds. One afternoon, a small group of non-Cathari workers, beings from conquered worlds, were cleaning the corridor outside the humans' room. One of them, a slender creature with feathered arms, paused and whispered through the door vent. They say you don't bow. Lisa knelt by the vent. We don't. Not unless we agree with what we're bowing to. The feathered worker hesitated. My people bowed for 50 cycles. We forgot how to stand. Then remember, Lisa said softly, standing doesn't always mean fighting. Sometimes it just means saying no quietly. That night, footage from the security feed, showing Lisa calmly explaining human rights to a group of guards, leaked onto the Dominion's internal network. Someone had copied it, shared it, and within hours it reached the outer colonies. On mining worlds and factory moons, enslaved species watched humans speak about freedom like it was normal. Like it was obvious. Back in their room, Jake and Lisa had no idea. They were too busy trying to fix a broken speaker so they could listen to old Earth music. Lisa hummed along to a song about dancing in the dark while Jake twisted wires with a borrowed tool. But outside, the Empire trembled. In the capital city of Vexus Prime, graffiti appeared on a government wall, 2 stick figures standing tall, with the words "Don't Flinch" written beneath in shaky Cathari script. Patrols scrubbed it off, but it reappeared the next night, bigger, bolder. Fraktan summoned his inner council. These humans are not warriors. They carry no weapons. Yet they spread unrest like a virus. One advisor spoke carefully. Perhaps it is not a virus, Overseer. Perhaps it is an idea. An idea cannot topple an empire, Fraktan growled. But it can make the people inside it ask questions, the advisor replied. Fraktan ordered the humans move to a high-security wing, far from visitors and communication lines, but even there they found ways to connect. Lisa left notes in the food trays, simple messages like "Be kind" or "Ask why." Jake taught a maintenance drone to play a tune from an old Earth lullaby. The drone hummed it as it rolled through the halls, and soon, other drones joined in, on a distant moon called Kessar 9, where insectoid laborers toiled in silence under Cathari overseers. A worker stopped mid-task one day. He looked up at the sky and said, "Why?" His fellow workers froze. No one had asked that in generations. The overseer raised his shock baton, but 10 others stepped in front of the questioner. They didn't fight. They just stood, and the overseer, for the first time, hesitated. Back on Vexus Prime, Trell visited Jake one last time before being reassigned. They say you will be taken to the Grand Conclave soon, he whispered. The Emperor himself will see you, Jake nodded. We'll be okay. Trell placed a small carved stone in Jake's hand, a symbol of safe passage in old Cathari tradition. I do not understand your ways, he said. But I think I would like to. The night before their transfer, Lisa sat by the window watching the purple storm swirl below. Do you ever wonder if we're making things worse? Jake joined her. Maybe. But if staying quiet was the right choice, the galaxy would have fixed itself by now. She smiled. Remember that time in college when you stood up to that professor who failed half the class just to feel powerful? Yeah, you told me I was being dumb, and then you did it anyway. Guess some things don't change. They both laughed, soft and tired. Outside, the stars burned cold and distant. But somewhere in the dark, 1,000 small acts of courage were beginning, sparked not by weapons or war cries, but by 2 humans who refused to act like they were less than they were. The Cathari thought control came from fear, but Jake and Lisa showed something else. That calmness in the face of power could be just as dangerous. And far harder to crush. In the morning, armored transports arrived. The humans stepped out without resistance. They didn't look back. They didn't flinch. And as the ship lifted off toward the Grand Conclave, a single drone in the station's lower levels kept humming that old Earth lullaby, quiet, steady, and full of hope. The Grand Conclave chamber was unlike anything Jake and Lisa had seen before. It stretched high into a dome of black crystal, lit from within by veins of glowing blue energy. Rows of tiered seats curved around a central platform, filled with delegates from dozens of species. Some armored, some robed, some barely more than shadows in the dim light. All of them had been conquered by the Cathari Dominion long ago. All of them came here once every cycle to kneel before the Emperor and swear loyalty once more. At the far end of the chamber, seated on a throne of fused star metal, was the Cathari Emperor himself. Older than Vraktan, his scales faded to silver, his eyes sharp with centuries of rule. He did not speak. He did not need to. His presence alone made the air feel heavy. Jake and Lisa were led to the center platform by silent guards. They wore simple gray uniforms now, given to them that morning. No restraints, no chains. Just two humans standing alone in the heart of an empire that had never known defiance without violence. A herald stepped forward, voice booming through the chamber. Present the primitives of Earth for ritual submission. This was the moment. Every other species had bowed, touched their foreheads to the floor, or offered a token of surrender. It was not a request. It was law. The Emperor watched, waiting. Lisa took a slow breath. Then she stepped forward, not in fear, not in anger, but with the calm of someone about to speak at a town meeting. "Your Majesty," she began, her voice clear and steady. "We come from a small world you've never heard of. We didn't come here to challenge you. We came here by accident. But since we're here, I want to say something." A murmur rippled through the crowd. No one spoke during the ritual. "No one," Lisa continued. "On Earth, we believe no one is born to kneel. Not to kings, not to empires, not even to fear. We've made terrible mistakes, hurt each other, broken our world, fought for stupid reasons. But we keep trying to do better. Because we believe every person has worth, even if they're small, even if they're strange, even if they come from a ship that got lost." She paused, then looked directly at the Emperor. "We don't have armies like yours. We don't have your power. But we have something else, the choice to stand. And today we choose to stand, not to insult you, but to show respect for who we are." Then, to the shock of every being in the room, she offered her hand. "If you ever want to talk instead of conquer, we're ready." Silence, not the usual obedient silence. This was a silence full of tension, surprise, and something new. Hope. The Emperor did not move. His eyes narrowed. His claws tapped once on the arm of his throne. Then he spoke, his voice low but carrying through the entire chamber. "You offer a handshake to an emperor?" "Yes," Lisa said. "It's how we say hello on Earth, no weapons, no tricks. Just two people meeting as equals." Jake stood beside her, quiet but present. He didn't speak. He didn't need to. His stance said everything. From the delegate rows, a figure rose slowly. It was a tall, four-armed being from the Mixari Collective, a species that had been stripped of its fleet and forced into silence for over a century. The Mixari delegate looked at the humans, then at the Emperor, and did not bow. Instead, it placed its hands together in the old Mixari sign of witness. Another delegate stood. Then another. Not all of them, but enough. Vraktan, watching from the side, felt his stomach tighten. This was not rebellion with weapons. This was rebellion with dignity, and that was far more dangerous. The Emperor finally rose. He did not take Lisa's hand, but he did not order her punished either. "You are either the bravest fools I have ever seen, or the first truth-tellers in this hall in 500 cycles." He turned to his herald. "End the ritual." Gasps filled the chamber. The ritual had never been ended early. Never. As guards moved to escort Jake and Lisa away, something unexpected happened. A young delegate from the Zenthari Concord, a peaceful species known for its scholars, broke rank and approached them. In a voice trembling with emotion, it said, "Will you teach us more about your world?" Lisa nodded. "If they let us." Back in their new quarters, This time in a wing reserved for honored guests, not prisoners. Jake sank into a chair. That went better than expected. Lisa sat beside him, exhausted but smiling. I thought he was going to vaporize me. Me too. But you were amazing. Outside, the Empire began to crack. Within hours, news of the conclave spread like wildfire. On 3 colony worlds, workers refused to report for duty. On a Cathari training moon, cadets questioned why they were taught only to obey. In the capital, a group of junior officers gathered in secret to discuss Earth's history. Not as a threat, but as a mirror. Raktan met with the Emperor that night in private. They are unraveling us with kindness, he said. The Emperor stared out at the storm-racked planet below. Perhaps we needed unraveling. The next morning, a formal request arrived at Earth's Deep Space Monitoring Station, a message encoded in human languages, polite and precise. It asked for clarification on human customs, interstellar law, and oddly, the recipe for something called chocolate chip cookies. It was signed by the office of the Cathari Emperor. Back on Vexus Prime, Jake and Lisa were given access to a small garden, a rare luxury in the metal heart of the Empire. There they met Trell again. He wore no armor now, just a simple tunic. I quit the Enforcers, he said quietly. I want to learn about your world. Lisa handed him a data slate loaded with Earth stories. Start with the ones about people helping each other, she said. As the sun rose over the purple clouds, the 2 humans sat in silence, watching alien birds dart between the towers. They knew they weren't safe yet. The Dominion was still powerful, but something had shifted. The idea that you could stand without fighting, speak without shouting, and still be heard. That idea was now loose in the galaxy, and no army, no throne, no ancient law could put it back in its box. The message reached Earth on a quiet Tuesday morning. It came through the deep space relay near Mars, clean and clear, wrapped in standard diplomatic encryption. At first, the operators thought it was a drill. Then they saw the sender, the Cathari Dominion. No human had ever heard of them. No human was supposed to. The message was polite. It asked for confirmation of Earth's location, requested a cultural exchange, and, oddly, asked if humans really use something called Wi-Fi to share thoughts instantly across cities. It ended with a simple line: "We would like to talk." Down in Houston, Mission Control buzzed with confusion. Up in orbit, the International Deep Space Council scrambled to respond. No one knew what to say. They had no fleet, no alien contact protocols beyond old movies and theory. But they had 2 missing researchers, Jake Morrison and Lisa Tran, last seen testing a jump drive near Proxima Centauri. Their ship, the Odyssey, had vanished 3 weeks ago. Then another message came. This one included video. It showed Jake and Lisa sitting in a sunlit room with high windows and strange plants. They looked tired but healthy. Jake waved. "Hey, Earth, sorry we're late." Got a little turned around. Lisa smiled. "We're okay, really, and things are changing out here." They explained what happened in simple terms: wrong jump, alien empire, no harm done. They didn't mention the fear, the uncertainty, the moments they thought they'd never see home again. They just said they'd been talking, and that maybe, just maybe, the galaxy wasn't as scary as everyone thought. The video ended with Lisa holding up a small carved stone. "This is from a friend. His name is Trell. He says hello." On Earth, people watched the clip over and over. News channels played it on loop. School children drew pictures of humans standing tall beside tall, scaly aliens. In bars and cafes, strangers asked each other, "What would you say to an alien?" For the first time in history, humanity wasn't preparing for war with the stars. It was preparing for a conversation. Back on Vexus Prime, Jake and Lisa were no longer guests. They were symbols. Delegates from other galactic powers began arriving, not to spy but to meet them. The Zenthari Conquered sent scholars who wanted to study Earth's music and law. The Myral Collective, known for its vast libraries, asked for copies of human stories, especially the ones about forgiveness. Even former enemies of the Cathari sent quiet messages, asking if the humans could help start a new kind of peace. The Cathari Empire didn't fall. It changed. Slowly, quietly. Work camps were reviewed. Old laws were questioned. Young Cathari started schools where they learned not just tactics but poetry. Vuraktan, once a hardline enforcer, now sat on a new council that included voices from a dozen species. including humans. Jake and Lisa stayed just long enough to help draft the first Human Dominion Cultural Accord. It wasn't a treaty of war or trade. It was a promise to listen, to share, to not assume the worst. Then came the day they left. Their old ship, the Odyssey, had been repaired, upgraded with Cathari tech that wouldn't break Earth's laws, just help them get home safely. At the docking bay, dozens gathered to see them off. Trell was there, now wearing the robes of a cultural liaison. He handed Lisa a small box. "For your coffee," he said. Inside were beans from a Cathari moon, roasted in the old way. Jake shook hands with Vraktan. "You sure you don't want to visit Earth? We've got great pizza." Vraktan almost smiled. "Perhaps one day." As the Odyssey lifted off, Lisa looked down at the purple world below. "We didn't do much," she said. "We did enough," Jake replied. "The trip home took 2 weeks. They spent it sleeping, eating real food from the new replicator, and watching old Earth movies the Cathari had downloaded for them. They didn't talk much about what happened. They didn't need to. They both knew. When they finally entered Earth's atmosphere, a small fleet of civilian ships greeted them. Not military, just curious citizens in private vessels, waving from their cockpits. On the ground there were no parades, no medals. Just friends, family, and a quiet welcome home. Jake went back to flying test ships. Lisa returned to teaching astrophysics. They gave a few interviews but never acted like heroes. They just said they got lost, met some interesting people, and came back with stories. But across the galaxy, things kept changing. The phrase "don't even flinch" became a whisper of courage on 100 worlds. Oppressed species used it as a code. Young Cathari wrote it on their desks. In the halls of the Grand Conclave, a new seat was added. Not for a warrior, but for a human observer. Earth began building its first real interstellar embassy. Not with weapons, but with classrooms, art studios, and gardens. They called it the Tran Morrison Center for Galactic Understanding. And far away in corners of the galaxy no human had ever seen, beings who once bowed without thinking now paused. They looked up. They asked why. And sometimes, just sometimes, they stood. The Cathari Empire still existed. But it was no longer just an empire of fear. It was becoming something new, something shaped in small but real ways by 2 humans who walked into the unknown and never once looked down. Humanity hadn't conquered the stars. They hadn't even tried. They just showed up, stayed calm, and reminded the galaxy that strength isn't always loud. Sometimes it's as quiet as a handshake, as simple as a cup of coffee, as human as not flinching when the whole universe expects you to break.